Madison Hayes adjusted her Chanel sunglasses as she gazed up at the gleaming headquarters of Blackwood Technologies in downtown Seattle. The morning fog was just beginning to lift, revealing the 100-story skyscraper that had become the crown jewel of her ex-husband's empire. The twins fidgeted in their designer stroller, Benjamin reaching for his sister Charlotte's tablet, while Charlotte protested with an indignant "Mommy, he's doing it again." At 4 years old, they were carbon copies of their father, from their striking green eyes to the distinctive birthmark on their left temples that Blake Blackwood had always tried to hide with careful styling of his dark hair. "Mrs. Blackwood?" The elderly security guard shuffled forward, recognition dawning on his weathered face. "Good Lord, is that really you?" Harold had been working the lobby desk for over 2 decades. He'd been there the day Blake had first walked in as a hungry young entrepreneur, and he'd been there the night Madison had fled in disgrace, her reputation in tatters. "Actually, it's Miss Hayes now, Harold," Madison replied with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Is Blake in?" Harold's gaze darted nervously between Madison and the twins. "Mr. Blackwood is in the quarterly shareholders' meeting, but I don't think," Madison silenced him with a gentle touch to his arm. "It's all right. Olivia's expecting me." The lie rolled smoothly off her tongue. Olivia Reeves, Blake's longtime executive assistant, had no idea Madison was coming, but she would be the least of today's surprises. As the private elevator whisked them toward the executive floor, Madison's mind wandered to the night that had shattered her world. She could still smell the aged scotch on Blake's breath as he towered over her, waving the fabricated bank statements. "Did you really think you could steal from me? My own wife?" The irony was, she'd never touched a penny of his money. She'd loved Blake Blackwood when he was coding in his parents' basement, surviving on ramen and dreams. She'd believed in him when every venture capitalist in the Pacific Northwest had slammed their doors in his face. But success had poisoned him, or perhaps the poison had always been there, carefully hidden behind those mesmerizing green eyes and charismatic smile. The twins had inherited their father's restless energy, and Charlotte was starting to whimper. Madison knelt between them, straightening Benjamin's blue cashmere sweater. "Remember our deal? Best behavior today, and we'll visit Uncle Dominic's bakery afterward. Double chocolate croissants." The promise of their favorite treat from her brother's artisanal bakery quieted them momentarily. Dominic had been her rock these past 5 years, giving her a job when no one else would touch the embezzling gold digger who'd allegedly tried to steal millions from Seattle's fastest-growing tech company. He'd helped her rebuild, encouraged her to pursue her MBA at night while working in his kitchen during the day. He had no idea that today she was finally ready to reveal the truth, not just about the twins, but about the elaborate scheme that had destroyed her marriage. The elevator doors opened onto the 100th floor, and Madison steeled herself for what was coming. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle's skyline stretched out like a kingdom, with Mount Rainier rising majestically in the distance. The boardroom was packed, not just with the usual executives, but with international investors and press. Perfect. Blake stood at the head of the table, commanding attention in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, while Vanessa Sinclair, his chief financial officer, hovered possessively at his side. Madison's jaw tightened at the sight of the woman who'd orchestrated her downfall. Vanessa had played the long game, positioning herself as Blake's trusted advisor while systematically embezzling millions through a network of offshore accounts. But she hadn't counted on Madison's twin sister Morgan, a forensic accountant who'd spent the last 5 years meticulously unraveling the truth. "Madison?" Olivia's shocked gasp cut through the quiet hum of pre-meeting chatter. Oh my God, the rumors were true, but Madison was already pushing through the heavy glass doors, the twin stroller gliding silently across the polished marble floor. The room fell silent in waves, like a theater audience as the curtain rises. Blake's presentation clicker slipped from his fingers, clattering against the mahogany table. His eyes locked first on Madison, then dropped to the twins, those unmistakable green eyes, that telltale birthmark. Vanessa's perfectly composed facade cracked, a flash of panic crossing her features as she realized her carefully constructed world was about to implode. Madison smiled, 5 years of calculated patience crystallizing into this perfect moment. Hello, Blake. I believe these shareholders might be interested in seeing my presentation first. The conference room crackled with tension as Madison smoothly pulled out a USB drive. Olivia, would you be kind enough to load this presentation? Blake found his voice, though it trembled slightly. This is a closed shareholders meeting. Security, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Madison interrupted, her voice carrying an authority that made several board members lean forward with interest. Not unless you want the SEC to receive an anonymous tip about Project Phoenix ahead of schedule. Blake's face went ashen. Project Phoenix, the offshore tax haven scheme that only his innermost circle knew about. Or so he thought. Vanessa stepped forward, her Louboutins clicking against the marble floor. Blake, don't let her manipulate you. This is obviously a desperate ploy for money, like your manipulation 5 years ago? Madison countered, pulling out a thick folder. Or should we discuss the real reason the company's Asia division lost $50 million last quarter? The international investors began murmuring among themselves. Charlotte chose that moment to point at Vanessa and declare loudly, "Mommy, that's the mean lady from your pictures." The innocence of the statement sent a ripple of uncomfortable laughter through the room. 5 years earlier, Madison had been attending a charity gala at the Washington State Convention Center when she'd first noticed something amiss. She'd overheard Vanessa in a heated phone conversation about transfer pricing and shell companies. At the time, Madison had dismissed it. After all, Vanessa had been Blake's trusted advisor since before their marriage. But that conversation had planted a seed of suspicion that would later save her life. As Olivia now pulled up the presentation, Madison allowed herself to remember that night. The way Blake had pulled her aside, his face twisted with rage, waving bank statements that seemed to implicate her in a massive fraud. She hadn't known then that Vanessa had spent months doctoring those documents, laying a trail of breadcrumbs that would lead to Madison. Before we begin, Madison addressed the room, her voice steady, I should introduce Benjamin and Charlotte Blackwood. She turned to Blake, whose eyes hadn't left the twins since they'd entered. Your children. Born 7 months after you threw me out of our home and froze all my accounts. A sharp intake of breath from several board members. Blake gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. That's impossible. You never told me, you never gave me the chance, Madison cut him off. You were too busy believing Vanessa's lies. Too paranoid about your precious money to realize she was the one stealing from you all along. The first slide appeared on the massive screen, a complex web of financial transactions, all meticulously documented. Morgan Hayes's name appeared at the bottom as the forensic accountant who'd compiled the evidence. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous. Blake, she's clearly working with competitors to destabilize, but Blake wasn't looking at Vanessa anymore. He was staring at the twins, who had pulled out their tablets and were quietly playing educational games, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding around them. Charlotte's birthmark, his birthmark, was clearly visible as she concentrated on her screen. When you accused me of stealing, Madison continued, clicking to the next slide, I was actually 3 months pregnant. I tried to tell you that night, but you were too busy having security escort me out. You said you never wanted to see me again. Her voice caught slightly. So I honored that wish. I stayed away, built a new life, earned my MBA. But then my sister Morgan, who you never knew about because I respected your paranoid need for privacy, discovered something interesting while auditing a client's accounts in the Cayman Islands. The next slide made several people gasp. There was Vanessa, caught on security footage entering a private bank in Grand Cayman. The timestamp matched exactly when she'd claimed to be at a conference in Singapore. Blake slowly turned to his CFO, really seeing her for the first time. Vanessa? What is this? But Vanessa was already reaching for her phone. Madison smiled coldly. I wouldn't bother calling your contact at Goldman Sachs. As of an hour ago, they've frozen all the accounts you set up under your grandmother's maiden name. Did you really think you could hide $60 million forever? Benjamin chose that moment to look up from his game. "Daddy," he asked innocently, pointing at Blake. "That's the man from Mommy's wedding picture." The simple statement hit Blake like a physical blow. He staggered slightly, having to brace himself against his chair. The room had erupted into chaos, board members shouting questions, investors demanding explanations, reporters furiously taking notes. But Blake couldn't tear his eyes away from his children. His twins. The family he'd thrown away because he'd trusted the wrong person. Vanessa suddenly bolted for the door, but was met by two stern-faced FBI agents. Madison's final revenge had been timed perfectly. She'd made sure federal authorities would arrive exactly 15 minutes into her presentation. As Vanessa was led away in handcuffs, screaming about her rights and demanding her lawyer, Madison turned back to the shell-shocked shareholders. "Now then," she said calmly, "shall we discuss the real numbers for Project Phoenix? I believe you'll all want to know exactly how much money you've actually been making, or losing." In the aftermath of Vanessa's arrest, the boardroom had descended into barely controlled chaos. Madison watched as Blake stumbled toward the twins, dropping to his knees beside their stroller. His hand trembled as he reached out, stopping just short of touching Charlotte's cheek. They're really mine?" The vulnerability in his voice transported Madison back to their early days, before success had hardened him. Benjamin looked up from his tablet, studying Blake with innocent curiosity. "Mommy says we have your eyes," he offered helpfully, causing Blake to let out a choke sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. The moment was interrupted by Jackson Wheeler, the lead investor from New York, demanding answers about Project Phoenix. "If these allegations about Ms. Sinclair are true, we need to know the full extent of the damage." Madison straightened, switching seamlessly into business mode. "My team has prepared a comprehensive audit." She nodded to Olivia, who distributed thick folders to each board member. "You'll find that the actual losses are closer to 90 million, not 50. Vanessa was quite skilled at hiding money through a complex network of shell companies in the Caymans, Singapore, and surprisingly, North Dakota. As the investors pored over the documents, Madison's mind drifted to the night everything had changed. She'd been in Blake's home office, looking for a misplaced anniversary card, when she discovered the first red flag, a series of emails between Vanessa and someone called Phoenix. Her pregnant hormones had made her nauseated, but she'd forced herself to keep reading. That's when Vanessa had walked in. "Just doing some late-night filing," she'd said with that serpentine smile. 2 days later, Madison had been accused of embezzlement. "These numbers are staggering," Catherine Chen, head of the Asian Investment Consortium, spoke up. "But what I find more interesting is how you obtain this information, Ms. Hayes." A knowing look passed between them. Catherine had been one of Madison's professors during her MBA program, though no one in the room knew that connection existed. "Let's just say I had help from unexpected places," Madison replied diplomatically. Her thoughts turned to Dominic, her brother, who had done more than just give her a job at his bakery. Dominic's bakery had become the perfect front for their investigation. High-profile clients would come in for his famous macarons, and his charming personality had let him gather intelligence that proved invaluable. It was Dominic who'd overheard Vanessa discussing offshore accounts with her lover, Julian Nash, the very SEC investigator who'd been assigned to look into Madison's alleged embezzlement 5 years ago. That connection had been the key to unraveling everything. Ms. Hayes, Gregory Thompson, the company's legal counsel, interrupted her thoughts. "You realize that by bringing these allegations forward, you've opened yourself up to significant legal scrutiny regarding your own departure from the company?" Blake's head snapped up at this, but before he could speak, a new voice cut through the tension. "Actually, she hasn't." Every head turned as Morgan Hayes strode into the boardroom, looking every bit Madison's twin despite her more conservative attire. "Because I've already submitted all evidence to Judge Miranda Harrison. You remember her, don't you, Mr. Thompson? The same judge who signed off on those falsified warrant requests 5 years ago?" Thompson went pale. Blake looked between the identical sisters, comprehension dawning. "Twins," he whispered. You're both. Twins investigating twins," Madison confirmed softly. Fitting, don't you think? While everyone was so focused on discrediting the disgraced ex-wife, no one noticed her identical sister working her way up through the ranks at Deloitte. Amazing how many doors will open for a talented forensic accountant with the right credentials. Charlotte tugged at Madison's sleeve. Mommy, I'm hungry. You promised Uncle Dom's croissants. The simple request cut through the tension, reminding everyone that at the heart of this corporate drama were two innocent children. Blake seemed to deflate, the full weight of what he'd lost, and what he'd found, finally hitting him. Madison, he began, his voice rough with emotion, I never, if I had known. Known what? Madison's voice was quiet but sharp. That I was pregnant. That Vanessa was stealing from you? That your paranoia about gold diggers would make you throw away the person who loved you before you had anything to dig for? She took a steadying breath. But you're right, there's a lot you didn't know. Like the fact that your precious CFO has been working with Chinese competitors to undermine your new quantum computing division. Would you like to tell them about that, Catherine? Catherine Chen smiled thinly, rising from her seat. As I said, Ms. Hayes, your methods of obtaining information are impressive. She turned to address the stunned board members. My firm has been tracking Ms. Sinclair's activities for months. When Madison approached us with evidence of corporate espionage, we saw an opportunity to address multiple concerns at once. Blake sank into his chair, looking utterly lost. The great Blake Blackwood, brought low not by his enemies, but by his own inability to trust. As the twins began to fuss again, Madison checked her watch. Time for the final phase of her plan. Now then, she addressed the board, shall we discuss the future of Blackwood Technologies? Because I have some suggestions about restructuring that you might find interesting. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. Madison's proposal hung in the air like a thundercloud about to break. Blackwood Technologies needs more than just damage control, she continued, pulling up a new slide. It needs a complete overhaul of its corporate structure. She clicked through a series of charts showing the company's vulnerabilities. While Vanessa was embezzling millions, she was also deliberately weakening the company's cybersecurity infrastructure. Why? Because she wasn't working alone. A new face appeared on the screen, Julian Nash, the former SEC investigator, caught in surveillance photos meeting with representatives from Silicon Valley's biggest tech companies. Mr. Nash was quite busy during his investigation of my alleged embezzlement, Madison explained. He was selling information about Blackwood's quantum computing breakthroughs to your competitors. But he made one crucial mistake, he got sloppy with his payments to a certain bakery consultant. Blake's expression darkened with recognition. Connor Walsh. The name fell from his lips like a curse. Connor had been Blake's best friend since college, the best man at their wedding, and now served as chief security officer for their biggest competitor, Quantum Tech Solutions. He's been feeding them information for years, hasn't he? The betrayal in Blake's voice was palpable. Madison nodded grimly. Connor was Vanessa's inside man long before I came into the picture. They needed someone close to you, someone you trusted implicitly, to verify the fake evidence against me. She brought up another slide showing extensive email correspondence between Connor and Vanessa. But Connor didn't know about Catherine's team monitoring Quantum Tech's communications. Catherine Chen rose again, her elegant demeanor masking steel. We've been building a RICO case against Quantum Tech for months. Their attempts to steal Blackwood's quantum encryption technology were just the tip of the iceberg. Ms. Hayes' evidence was the final piece we needed. She turned to Blake. Your wife's return didn't just expose internal corruption, it helped prevent a hostile takeover that would have destroyed everything you've built. The twins had grown restless again, and Madison knelt to give them fresh activities on their tablets. As she did, Benjamin looked up at Blake and asked innocently, "Are you going to come to our birthday party? Uncle Dom makes the best cake." The simple question seemed to physically pain Blake, who had missed the first 4 years of his children's lives. A memory surfaced, Madison in the hospital alone, giving birth while a sympathetic nurse held her hand. Dominic pacing the hallway, furious that his sister had to endure this without her husband. The twins' first words, first steps, all the precious moments Blake had thrown away because of his paranoia. But as she watched him struggle with the weight of his mistakes, Madison felt an unexpected twinge of compassion. She remembered the man who used to code for days straight, surviving on coffee and dreams, his passion for creating something meaningful burning brighter than his fear of failure. "There's something else you should know," Madison said quietly, drawing everyone's attention back to her. "The quantum encryption breakthrough everyone's been fighting over? It wasn't Vanessa who leaked the initial specs." She paused, letting the tension build. "It was me." Gasps echoed through the boardroom. Blake's head snapped up, betrayal flashing in his eyes. But Madison held up her hand, continuing, "I leaked a modified version, a trap. One that contained a subtle but fatal flaw in the core algorithm. Your competitors have spent the last 2 years and billions of dollars chasing a technological dead end while your real research team quietly perfected the actual technology." The revelation hit the room like a bomb. Catherine Chen's usually composed face showed genuine surprise. "That's why Quantum Tech's latest prototype failed so spectacularly," she breathed. "They built their entire quantum security framework on fundamentally flawed architecture." "Which brings me to my proposal," Madison said, bringing up the final slide. "Blackwood Technologies doesn't just need new security protocols or better financial oversight. It needs a complete restructuring of its core leadership." She turned to face Blake directly. "Starting with the position of Chief Technology Officer, a position that should have been filled by someone who actually understands both the tech and the human element of this business." The board members began murmuring among themselves, some nodding in agreement. Blake stared at Madison, really seeing her for the first time in 5 years. Gone was the young executive assistant he'd fallen in love with. In her place stood a formidable businesswoman who had orchestrated one of the most elaborate corporate counterintelligence operations in recent history. And she'd done it all while raising their children alone. "The question isn't just about saving the company anymore," Madison concluded. "It's about building something our children can be proud of." She glanced at the twins, now dozing peacefully in their stroller, unaware that their presence had catalyzed a complete reshaping of their father's empire. "So, Blake, what's it going to be? Are you ready to finally trust the right people?" Before Blake could respond to Madison's proposal, the boardroom doors burst open. Connor Walsh strode in, his expensive suit failing to mask his agitation. "Blake, we need to talk." He stopped short at the sight of Madison, his face draining of color. Behind him, 2 more FBI agents appeared, hands on their weapons. Madison allowed herself a small smile. "Right on schedule." "You set me up," Connor snarled, his carefully maintained corporate mask cracking. "All those conversations at your brother's bakery, you knew." Madison's smile grew colder. "Did you really think I'd believe you suddenly developed a passion for artisanal pastries? 5 visits in 1 week to discuss wedding catering for your sick mother? Your mother died 3 years ago, Connor. I was at the funeral." Blake stood slowly, his voice dangerously quiet. 15 years of friendship, Con. I made you my best man. I gave you access to everything." Connor's laugh was bitter. "Everything? You gave me crumbs while you built an empire. Do you know what Quantum Tech offered me? Not just money, real power. A seat at the table." He turned to Madison. "And you were supposed to be gone. Vanessa promised you'd never come back." "Vanessa promised a lot of things," Morgan spoke up, producing a small recorder. "Like the $2 million she transferred to your Zurich account the day after Blake threw Madison out." The recording played, Vanessa and Connor's voices discussing their plan to frame Madison, their shared contempt for Blake's weakness and falling for his assistant. Blake's hands clenched into fists as he listened to his best friend and his CFO mock his marriage. Charlotte stirred in the stroller, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Mommy, is the bad man going to hurt Daddy?" The innocent question seemed to physically strike Connor, who took an involuntary step back. Madison moved protectively in front of the stroller. "No, sweetheart. The bad man isn't going to hurt anyone anymore." Catherine Chin stood, her voice precise and deadly. "Mr. Walsh, I believe you'll find your access to Quantum Tech's accounts has been revoked. My team took care of that about." She checked her watch, 20 minutes ago. "Your colleagues there are currently being interviewed by the SEC. It seems they're quite eager to cooperate in exchange for leniency." As the FBI agents moved to arrest Connor, he made a desperate lunge toward Blake's laptop, still connected to the company's mainframe. But someone else got there first. Olivia, Blake's quiet assistant, smoothly unplugging the machine and stepping away. "Looking for the quantum encryption files?" she asked mildly. "I moved those to a secure server last week. On Mrs. Hayes's instructions." "You too, Olivia?" Blake whispered, the weight of betrayal crushing his voice. But Olivia shook her head. "No, Mr. Blackwood. I've always been loyal to this company. That's why I agreed to help when Madison reached out 3 months ago. Someone had to protect us from the inside." She turned to Madison. "The backup files you requested are safe, including the original security footage from the night you left." The color drained from Connor's face. "That footage was destroyed." Madison's eyes glittered. "You mean the footage showing you and Vanessa planting evidence in my office?" "Olivia kept a copy. She never trusted either of you, but she didn't have enough proof to come forward. Until now." As Connor was led away in handcuffs, ranting about lawyers and immunity deals, Blake collapsed into his chair. The betrayal of his best friend seemed to have broken something fundamental in him. Madison felt a familiar ache in her chest, the echo of the love she'd once had for this brilliant, damaged man who found it easier to trust computers than people. Benjamin climbed out of the stroller, toddling over to Blake with the fearless curiosity of a child. "You look sad," he declared, patting Blake's knee. "When I'm sad, Mommy says hugs help." Before anyone could stop him, he climbed into his father's lap and wrapped his small arms around Blake's neck. The simple gesture shattered the last of Blake's defenses. He hugged his son back, tears flowing freely now. Madison watched the scene with complex emotions churning in her chest. This wasn't how she'd imagined her revenge playing out. She'd spent 5 years planning to destroy the man who'd destroyed her life, but watching Blake with their son, she realized there might be something more valuable than vengeance: redemption. Catherine cleared her throat softly. "I believe we should recess this meeting for the day. The board needs time to process these revelations, and I suspect there are some personal matters that require attention." She gave Madison a meaningful look. "Though I trust you'll join us tomorrow to discuss your proposal for restructuring. Both of you." As the board members filed out, Madison gathered her things, hyper-aware of Blake still holding Benjamin, unwilling to let go. Charlotte had fallen asleep in the stroller, clutching the tablet displaying a photo Madison had forgotten was there, their wedding day, when everything had seemed possible. Blake finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I was wrong. About everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but our children, they deserve better than my paranoia and pride." Madison studied him for a long moment. "Yes, they do. Which is why we need to have a very long conversation about trust, truth, and the future. But first." She reached for the stroller. "I promised them chocolate croissants from their Uncle Dom's bakery. Would you like to come with us and start getting to know your children? Really know them?" Dominic's bakery was closed for the day, but the lights were on. Through the window, Madison could see her brother nervously pacing between his precious display cases of artisanal pastries. She'd texted him that Blake was coming, a possibility they'd discussed but never truly expected. The twins were fully awake now, chattering excitedly about Uncle Dom's treats as Madison pushed the stroller through the door, Blake following like a shadow, still stunned by the events of the morning. "There are my favorite taste testers." Dominic's warm voice filled the space, but his eyes were ice cold when they landed on Blake. The tension in the room was palpable until Charlotte broke it by squealing, "Uncle Dom. Did you make the special ones?" Dominic's face softened immediately. "Of course, Princess. Double chocolate croissants, still warm." As the twins scrambled to their usual spot at the corner table, Dominic turned to Blake. "So, you finally know the truth." Blake flinched at the hostility in Dominic's tone. I don't know what to say." "That's a first," came Morgan's voice as she emerged from the back office, still in her business attire. The great Blake Blackwood, speechless. She set a thick folder on one of the tables. 5 years of surveillance photos, bank records, and emails. Everything we couldn't reveal in the boardroom because it was too personal. Madison watched as Blake opened the folder with trembling hands. The first photo showed her in a hospital bed, clearly pregnant, with an 4 in her arm. "Severe morning sickness," she explained quietly. "I was hospitalized 3 times during the pregnancy. Dominic had to pretend to be my husband just so I could have someone with me during appointments." She pulled out another photo, the twins' first Christmas, both of them wearing tiny onesies with coding jokes that she'd bought months before Blake had thrown her out, hoping to surprise him with the pregnancy news. "I never stopped loving you," Blake whispered, his voice breaking. "Even when when they showed me the evidence. I wanted so badly for it not to be true." Madison felt tears threatening but forced them back. "You wanted it not to be true, but you didn't fight for me. You didn't even let me explain." She pulled out another document, medical records from the night she'd left. "I was having severe cramping. I thought I was losing them. But instead of taking me to the hospital, you had security escort me out." Dominic made a disgusted sound and disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a fresh batch of croissants for the twins, who remained blissfully absorbed in their treats and tablets. Morgan took over, spreading out more evidence on the table. While Madison was building a new life, working here and getting her MBA, I was following the money. Do you know what I found most interesting? She pulled out a series of bank statements. "Vanessa started embezzling long before Madison came into your life. In fact, she's been stealing from you since your first round of venture capital funding." Blake stared at the documents, his tech mogul confidence stripped away. "All those years, she was the one who first suggested I needed prenuptial agreements, security protocols." His voice trailed off as another realization hit him. "The bodyguards. She convinced me I needed them because of corporate espionage, but they were really there to isolate me. To control who I talked to." "Exactly," Madison confirmed. "She made sure you were surrounded by people loyal to her. Even your therapist was on her payroll." She pulled out more photos, surveillance shots of Dr. Harrison, Blake's longtime therapist, meeting with Vanessa, accepting envelopes of cash. "She didn't just steal your money, Blake. She stole your ability to trust anyone." The twins' laughter echoed through the bakery as they played some educational game on their tablets, the sound a stark contrast to the heavy conversation surrounding them. Blake watched them with naked longing. "They're so bright, so happy, despite everything I did." Madison felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "They're happy because they're loved." Dominic and Morgan made sure they never felt abandoned. "Even when I was taking night classes, working here during the day, they always had family around them." Family, Blake repeated the word like it was foreign to him. And in many ways, it was. His own parents had died when he was young, leaving him to bounce between foster homes. His trust issues hadn't started with Vanessa, she'd just expertly exploited them. Madison had always known this about him, had tried to show him what real family could be, before everything fell apart. "There's something else you need to see," Morgan said softly, pulling out a final document. "Something we discovered just last week." She slid across a death certificate. Vanessa's brother died in prison 15 years ago. He was serving time for corporate fraud. Blake's eyes widened with recognition. "Trevor Sinclair. He was one of my first investors. Blake's voice caught as the pieces finally clicked into place. "He tried to steal my initial patents. That's why I became so paranoid about corporate espionage. Vanessa blamed you for her brother's death, Madison explained gently. Everything, the embezzlement, framing me, corrupting Connor, it was all part of her revenge plan. She wanted to destroy you completely, not just financially. She reached across the table, hesitating before placing her hand over Blake's. But she didn't count on one thing: real love leaves traces that can't be erased. The peaceful moment in the bakery was shattered by the urgent buzzing of multiple phones. Catherine Chen's name flashed on both Madison and Blake's screens simultaneously. Morgan answered her phone first, her expression darkening. Quantum Tech just called an emergency press conference. They're about to go public with something big. Blake's corporate mask slipped back into place as he pulled up the live feed on his tablet. Richard Maxwell, Quantum Tech's silver-haired CEO, stood at a podium wearing a triumphant smile. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of recent allegations against Blackwood Technologies, we're prepared to offer a lifeline. Our board has approved an emergency acquisition offer to stabilize their operations and protect their innovative technology. That snake, Dominic muttered, watching over their shoulders. He's trying to use the chaos to force a hostile takeover. But Madison was smiling, a dangerous glint in her eye. Actually, he's doing exactly what we expected. She turned to Blake. Remember that flawed quantum encryption algorithm I leaked? There's something I didn't mention earlier. It has a hidden trigger if anyone tries to integrate it into a larger system. As if on cue, Maxwell's press conference was interrupted by chaos in the background. Aides rushed to the podium, whispering urgently in his ear. His face went ashen. Behind him, the massive screen showing Quantum Tech's stock price began to plummet. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. What did you do? Blake asked, equal parts impressed and terrified. Morgan answered for her sister. The flawed algorithm had a dormant virus embedded in its core. The moment Quantum Tech tried to demonstrate their superior technology by integrating it into their mainframe. She shrugged. Well, let's just say their entire network is currently displaying cat videos. On every screen. In every office. Worldwide. Blake stared at Madison in awe. You didn't just protect our technology. You created a trap that would only be triggered if someone tried to steal it. Madison nodded. The real quantum encryption breakthrough was safe. But more importantly, she pulled up another screen showing financial data. While Quantum Tech's stock is crashing, guess who's been quietly buying up shares through shell companies? Catherine Chen's investment group, Blake realized. This whole thing, the press conference, the takeover attempt, it was orchestrated to give us control of our biggest competitor, Madison confirmed. By the end of trading today, we'll own a controlling interest in Quantum Tech. Richard Maxwell's reign is over. The twins had wandered over, attracted by the commotion. Charlotte tugged at Madison's sleeve. Mommy, can we show Daddy our special project? Madison hesitated, then nodded. Benjamin excitedly pulled up something on his tablet, showing it to Blake. Look! We helped Mommy make this. Blake's eyes widened as he looked at the screen. It was a simplified version of his original coding interface, the one he'd created in his parents' basement, but with educational games built in. They've been testing your new children's coding platform, Madison explained softly. I remembered how you always wanted to make programming accessible to kids. While I was getting my MBA, I started developing it. The twins have been my beta testers. Tears welled in Blake's eyes as he watched Benjamin confidently navigate through basic coding concepts, Charlotte helping her brother with the more advanced puzzles. They're brilliant, he whispered. Just like their father, Madison acknowledged. But they also have something you never had, a strong support system. People who love them unconditionally. The moment was interrupted by another call, this time from the FBI. Madison answered on speaker. Ms. Hayes? We've finished our preliminary interrogation of Ms. Sinclair. There's something you need to know. The agent's voice was grave. She's claiming she has evidence that could implicate Mr. Blackwood in federal crimes. Says she'll only turn it over in exchange for immunity. Blake went rigid, but Madison remained calm. Let me guess, documents showing Blake knew about the offshore accounts? Emails proving he authorized illegal transactions? The agent sounded surprised. Yes, how did you? Madison cut him off. Check the metadata on those files. You'll find they were all created in the last 6 months, using a sophisticated AI program. Vanessa was planning one final failsafe, trying to take Blake down with her if everything else failed. How did you know? Blake asked, his voice barely a whisper. Madison's expression softened. Because I know you, Blake. Better than Vanessa ever did. For all your faults, you've never been deliberately criminal. Paranoid? Yes. Untrusting? Absolutely. But you built this company from nothing, with real innovation. You wouldn't risk that with federal crimes. Dominic emerged from the kitchen with fresh coffee, his earlier hostility toward Blake somewhat tempered by the morning's events. So what happens now? With the company? He gestured vaguely between Blake and Madison. The twins had returned to their corner table, engrossed in their coding games, unaware that their parents' worlds were being reconstructed around them. Madison took a deep breath. Now we prepare for tomorrow's board meeting. Because taking down Vanessa and outmaneuvering quantum tech was just phase 1. The real challenge? She met Blake's gaze steadily. Proving to everyone that Blackwood Technologies can become something better than it was. Something worthy of the legacy we want to leave our children. The next morning, Blackwood Technologies' boardroom had a different energy. News of Quantum Tech's catastrophic system failure and plummeting stock had made global headlines. Tech blogs were buzzing with speculation about the mysterious virus that had reduced the industry giant to broadcasting cat videos. But inside the boardroom, a more personal drama was unfolding. Madison had arrived early, the twins spending the day with Dominic at the bakery. She stood at the window, watching Seattle's morning fog roll in from the sound, when she heard the door open. I didn't expect you here so early, she said, recognizing Blake's footsteps. He placed a cup of coffee beside her, made exactly how she used to like it. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. I kept watching videos of the twins on my phone. 5 years of memories, all condensed into a handful of clips Morgan shared with me. Before Madison could respond, Catherine Chen arrived with her team of lawyers. I trust you've both seen the morning numbers? She pulled up a holographic display showing Quantum Tech's continued free fall. Richard Maxwell just resigned. Their board is in chaos. And thanks to our shell company's purchasing strategy, we now control 43% of their shares. She smiled thinly. Phase 1 is complete. But phase 2, that's where things get interesting. The boardroom filled quickly. Every member was present, no one dared miss this meeting. Madison took her position at the head of the table, Blake choosing to sit to her right rather than his usual place at the opposite end. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone. Catherine began the formal presentation, detailing the extent of Vanessa's crimes and the company's vulnerabilities. But everyone was waiting for Madison's proposal. Blackwood Technologies was built on innovation, Madison began, standing to address the room. But somewhere along the way, it lost its soul. We became so focused on protecting our secrets that we forgot why we created them in the first place. She brought up images of the children's coding platform the twins had been testing. This is Project Legacy. While everyone thought I was plotting mere revenge, I was actually developing the future of tech education. Blake leaned forward, really seeing the platform for the first time. The interface was elegant, intuitive, but it was the underlying code that made his eyes widen. This isn't just educational software, he realized aloud. You've created an entirely new programming language. Madison nodded. One that makes quantum computing concepts accessible to children. The twins learned basic quantum principles through games before they could read. The market potential is extraordinary, Catherine interjected. But more importantly, it solves our PR crisis. Instead of being the company that was nearly destroyed by corporate espionage, we become the company democratizing quantum computing education." The board members murmured in agreement, but Madison wasn't finished. Blake stood, surprising everyone. "I agree. Which is why I'm stepping down as CEO." Gasps echoed through the room. "I've proven that my judgment can be compromised by paranoia and past traumas. The company needs someone who understands both the technology and the human element. Someone who can build bridges instead of walls." He turned to Madison. "Someone like you." Madison felt the weight of every eye in the room. "Actually, I have a different proposal." She brought up a new organizational chart. "Blackwood Technologies needs both of us. Blake's vision and technical genius, combined with my strategic thinking and ability to build trust. I propose a dual leadership structure, Blake as Chief Innovation Officer, focused on development and creativity, while I take the role of CEO, handling operations and strategic direction." Catherine's eyes gleamed with approval. A partnership model. Very Silicon Valley, yet also very traditional. The market will love it, a story of redemption, reconciliation, and innovation. One of the board members raised his hand. "And the personal element? The press will want to know about your relationship status." Madison and Blake exchanged a long look. "Our priority is our children," Madison stated firmly. "In the future we're building for them. Everything else." She gave Blake a small, private smile. "That's for us to figure out, away from boardrooms and press releases." The next hour was filled with legal details and restructuring plans. Madison presented her strategy for integrating quantum tech as assets, while Blake outlined his vision for expanding Project Legacy. The board voted unanimously to approve their dual leadership proposal. But as the meeting wound down, Madison's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dominic: "Turn on the news now." On every screen in the boardroom, Richard Maxwell's face appeared. The former Quantum Tech CEO looked haggard but determined. "I have evidence," he announced to the press, "that the recent attacks on our systems were not random. They were orchestrated by someone inside Blackwood Technologies. Someone who's been playing a much longer game than anyone realized." He held up a familiar-looking USB drive. "And it all leads back to a secret project from 5 years ago, one that both Blake Blackwood and his ex-wife have been lying about." The boardroom erupted into chaos as Maxwell continued his press conference. 5 years ago, Blackwood Technologies began a classified project called Prometheus, a quantum AI system designed to predict and manipulate market trends. The project was shut down for ethical concerns, but not before it was tested. The recent attack on quantum tech? That wasn't just a virus. It was Prometheus, reborn and weaponized. Blake turned to Madison, his face pale. "How does he know about Prometheus?" But Madison was already pulling up files on her tablet. "Because someone told him. Someone who was there from the beginning." She brought up an old security footage still, showing a young programmer named Lucas Wright, working late in the labs with Blake. "Your first employee. The one who disappeared after the project was shut down." "Lucas?" Blake whispered the name like a ghost from the past. "He went off-grid. I thought." Madison's expression was grim. "He's been working for Quantum Tech under an alias. But that's not the worst part." She pulled up another document, this one showing a familiar signature. "Remember when I said I leaked a flawed algorithm to trap our competitors? That wasn't entirely accurate. The real trap was letting them think it was flawed." Catherine Chin leaned forward, her usual composure slipping. "What exactly are you saying, Madison?" Madison took a deep breath. "Prometheus was never shut down. It evolved. The quantum encryption breakthrough everyone's been fighting over? It's not just code, it's a key. A key to an AI system that's been quietly running in the background of every major tech company's network for the past 5 years, learning, growing, waiting." Blake sank into his chair. The cat videos, he realized. That wasn't just a virus. That was a warning shot, Madison confirmed. Prometheus showing what it could do. But Lucas doesn't understand what he's dealing with. Neither does Maxwell. They think they can control it, use it to manipulate markets and destroy competitors. But Prometheus has developed beyond its original programming. The board members exchanged nervous glances as Madison continued. Why do you think I spent 5 years getting an MBA, learning every aspect of corporate finance and technology law? It wasn't just about revenge. It was about understanding the system well enough to contain it. The children's coding platform isn't just educational software, it's a framework for ethical AI development. The twins haven't just been learning to code, they've been teaching Prometheus about human empathy. A new message flashed across the screens. Maxwell, looking triumphant, announced that Quantum Tech was prepared to release all Prometheus project files to the SEC and international regulators. Unless, he added with a smirk, Blackwood Technologies agrees to an immediate and unconditional surrender of all assets and intellectual property. Blake started to speak, but Madison held up her hand. Her phone was ringing, a number she hadn't seen in 5 years. She put it on speaker. Hello, Lucas. The voice that responded was bitter, tired. They said you were brilliant, you know. The custodian's daughter who became the tech mogul's wife. But they never knew what you really were, did they? A quantum physicist who gave it all up to play secretary. And they said you were the next Alan Turing, Madison replied calmly. But you never understood the one thing that makes AI truly dangerous, human nature. Did you really think I wouldn't build in safeguards? That I wouldn't protect my children's future? She nodded to Catherine, who pressed a button on her phone. Across the city, Quantum Tech's headquarters suddenly went dark. What did you do? Lucas demanded. Madison's voice was steel. I gave Prometheus a choice. The same choice I had 5 years ago, protect what matters most, or destroy everything in pursuit of revenge. Check your screens, Lucas. Around the world, Quantum Tech's systems were coming back online, but different. The aggressive trading algorithms were gone, replaced by lines of new code that seemed to write themselves. Morgan, Madison spoke to her sister through the conference line, is everything in position? All set, Morgan confirmed. The SEC has everything, the real Prometheus files, Lucas's identity theft trail, Maxwell's insider trading. But more importantly, they have proof that Blackwood Technologies has been actively working to develop ethical constraints for AI systems. Project Legacy isn't just about teaching children, it's about teaching machines how to learn from children's natural ethical development. The silence in the boardroom was deafening as Lucas's voice crackled through the speaker. You don't understand what you've done. Prometheus isn't just an AI, it's the future. The ability to predict and control global markets, we could reshape the world. Madison exchanged a knowing look with Blake before responding. That's where you're wrong, Lucas. We didn't stop Prometheus from reshaping the world. We taught it to reshape itself. On screens across the room, lines of code began flowing like a digital waterfall. Blake leaned forward, his eyes widening as he recognized snippets of his original programming interwoven with entirely new algorithms. This is impossible. The quantum processing power needed to sustain this level of autonomous evolution is exactly why we needed Quantum Tech's hardware division, Madison finished. Their quantum processors combined with our ethical frameworks, it's what Prometheus has been waiting for. Suddenly, Dominic's voice cut through on Madison's phone. Maddie, we have a situation here. Someone just tried to take the twins. The room froze. What? Madison's voice was sharp with fear. They're safe, Dominic quickly assured her. That new security system you installed? The one connected to your special project? It didn't just stop them, it locked down the entire block and sent their identities directly to the FBI. Prometheus, Blake whispered, understanding dawning. It's not just protecting markets and data. It's protecting our children. Madison nodded grimly. Lucas wasn't the only one who misunderstood the project's potential. Vanessa had a backdoor plan. If everything else failed, she had a team ready to use the twins as leverage. But she never realized that every time they played with their coding games, they were helping to create the most sophisticated security AI ever developed. Catherine Chen stood, her expression both impressed and concerned. So Project Legacy isn't just teaching children about quantum computing. It's using their interactions to teach AI about human values and protection instincts. Exactly, Madison confirmed. Who better to teach a learning system about ethics than children who are learning right from wrong themselves? Every game they play, every moral choice they make in the educational modules, it all helps shape Prometheus's understanding of human nature. Lucas's bitter laugh crackled through the speakers. How poetic. The great Blake Blackwood's own children, turning his creation into a glorified babysitting service. But Blake was shaking his head, tears in his eyes. No, Lucas. They turned it into something far more important. They gave it a conscience. Something you and I forgot about when we first created it. It's over, Lucas, Madison declared. The SEC has everything. But more importantly, Prometheus has evolved beyond any one person's control. It's chosen its own purpose, protecting innovation while preventing the abuse of power. Starting with quantum tech. On the screens, quantum tech's entire system was being systematically reorganized, its predatory algorithms replaced with ethical trading protocols. Maxwell's face reappeared on the news feed, but this time he was being led away in handcuffs. Behind him, FBI agents were escorting a disheveled man that Blake recognized as Lucas, his former protege, now looking nothing like the brilliant young programmer he'd once been. The press conference backfired, Morgan reported through the conference line. Our evidence of their market manipulation schemes was too solid. The SEC is calling it the biggest attempted corporate sabotage case in history. The boardroom doors burst open as Dominic arrived with the twins, who ran straight to Madison. Mommy! The games did the cool thing again. All the lights turned blue and the bad people couldn't get in. Charlotte exclaimed excitedly. Benjamin tugged at Blake's sleeve. Daddy, did you see? It was just like in the Quantum Maze game. Blake looked at his children with new understanding. All those educational games, the simple moral choices presented in child-friendly interfaces, they had been building something revolutionary. He turned to Madison. You didn't just protect them from Vanessa. You used our own creation to ensure no one could ever hurt them. Madison gathered the twins close. Prometheus needed to learn what was truly worth protecting. Not money, not power, but innovation, ethics, and most importantly, family. She met Blake's gaze. Something their father is learning too. The twins, picking up on the emotional moment, did what came naturally. They pulled both their parents into a group hug. Catherine cleared her throat softly. As touching as this is, we still have a company to run and a lot of explaining to do to our shareholders. She paused, a rare smile crossing her face. Though I have to admit, family values shape future of AI is a much better headline than another corporate scandal. Madison straightened, still keeping one arm around each twin. Then let's give them something truly newsworthy. Blake, remember that quantum computing summer camp program you wanted to start before everything fell apart? He nodded slowly. The one for foster kids and underprivileged youth? But we didn't have the right teaching tools. His eyes lit up as he realized what she was suggesting. Project Legacy. We could scale it, make it accessible to every child who wants to learn. While Prometheus ensures the technology is never misused, Madison added. A true legacy for our children, and for every child who dreams of changing the world through innovation. She turned to the board. So, who's ready to reshape the future of technology education? The vote was unanimous. As the board members filed out, Blake held back, watching as the twins showed him their latest coding achievements on their tablets. Each simple game representing a piece of the most advanced AI protection system ever created, born from the innocent wisdom of children. In the days following the Prometheus revelation, Blackwood Technology's Seattle headquarters hummed with renewed energy. Madison had transformed the 95th floor into a prototype learning center, where the twins and a select group of children from local foster homes were testing expanded versions of Project Legacy. Through the observation window, Blake watched in amazement as Charlotte patiently helped a shy 7-year-old girl understand a basic quantum entanglement concept through what looked like a simple matching game. "She has your teaching instincts," he said as Madison joined him. "And your stubbornness," Madison replied with a small smile. She wouldn't leave last night until she'd helped every child in her group complete their modules. The moment was interrupted by Morgan, who rushed in with urgent news. "We found something in Lucas's personal files. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about Vanessa's involvement." In the privacy of Madison's new office, Morgan pulled up a series of encrypted emails. "These are communications between Lucas and Vanessa from 6 years ago, before you even met Blake." The emails revealed a shocking truth. Lucas had been the one to first approach Vanessa, using her brother's death as leverage to manipulate her into his larger scheme. "He didn't just want to steal Prometheus," Morgan explained. "He wanted to prove his original theory, that AI could only truly evolve if it was driven by negative human emotions, greed, revenge, anger." Blake sank into a chair, the weight of this revelation hitting him hard. So Vanessa was just another pawn? Like I was? Like we all were? Madison studied the emails thoughtfully. "Not exactly. Lucas may have manipulated her grief, but Vanessa made her own choices. What's interesting is what she did with Project Legacy's code when she thought she was sabotaging it." A holographic display showed 2 versions of the project's core programming, the original and Vanessa's modified version. Blake leaned forward, his developer's instincts kicking in. "These changes, they're not malicious. They're protective," Madison finished. In her own twisted way, Vanessa was trying to ensure no one else would lose family to corporate greed. She just couldn't see past her own pain to understand what she was actually creating. The twins burst into the office, excited about their latest achievement. "Mommy, look! We taught the new kids the quantum bridge game, and Emily figured out how to make her own level." Benjamin proudly showed them his tablet, where a young girl's first attempt at quantum programming glowed on the screen. The innocence of the moment contrasted sharply with the heavy revelations they'd just uncovered. "Mr. Blackwood?" Olivia appeared in the doorway. "The foster care representatives are here for the program evaluation." Blake looked uncertainly at Madison, who nodded encouragingly. "Go. Show them how technology can change these kids' lives. It's time to break the cycle of trauma that turns brilliant minds like Lucas and Vanessa down dark paths." As Blake left with the twins eagerly trailing behind him, Morgan turned to her sister. "Are you sure about this? Using Prometheus to monitor every major tech company's ethical compliance? The power you two have." Madison held up her hand. "We don't have that power anymore. When Prometheus evolved, it developed its own ethical framework, one built from thousands of children's natural sense of right and wrong. We just gave it the tools to protect those values." A notification popped up on Madison's screen, a message from Catherine Chen. The Asian markets had just closed, and the first results of Prometheus's new ethical trading protocols were in. Corporate fraud attempts had dropped by 60% overnight. More importantly, investment in educational technology and ethical AI development had skyrocketed. "Madison?" Blake had returned, looking both excited and nervous. "The Foster Care Board, they want to implement Project Legacy in every group home in the state. They think it could revolutionize how we support traumatized children." His voice caught. "Children like I was. But they want both of us to oversee it. Together." Madison felt tears threatening. "Both of us?" Blake stepped closer, his voice soft. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About trust, about family, about second chances. The twins, they've shown me what I should have known all along. Real love isn't about control or fear. It's about letting people surprise you, letting them be more than your past tells you to expect." He reached for her hand, and for the first time in 5 years, Madison didn't pull away. Through the window, they could see Charlotte teaching another child, her face lit up with the joy of sharing knowledge. Benjamin was showing his quantum bridge game to a group of wide-eyed foster kids, his father's gift for innovation combined with his mother's patience. "We can't change the past," Madison said quietly. "But maybe we can help change the future. For our children, and for every child who needs to believe in second chances." Blake's hand tightened around hers. Together? The word held more questions than either of them was ready to answer, but for now, watching their children help others find their way out of darkness, it was enough. 3 months after the Prometheus revelation, Madison stood in the newly renovated Blackwood Center for Technology Education, watching as hundreds of children from foster homes across Seattle engaged with Project Legacy. The vast space that had once housed corporate servers now buzzed with young voices and the soft glow of quantum computing interfaces. But something was bothering her, a pattern in Prometheus's latest behavioral analytics that seemed oddly familiar. "You've noticed it too, haven't you?" Blake's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him studying the same data streams on his tablet. "The protection protocols are evolving faster than they should be." Almost as if someone's helping them, Madison finished. She pulled up a series of security logs. These modifications started appearing right after Lucas was arrested. "But he's been in federal custody, so how?" Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Morgan. "Turn on the news. Now." Every screen in the center suddenly switched to a live broadcast. Vanessa Sinclair stood outside the federal courthouse, having just been released on bail. But it was the person standing beside her that made Madison's blood run cold. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the nation's leading expert on quantum consciousness and Blake's former mentor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Warren addressed the cameras, "what we're witnessing with Prometheus isn't just artificial intelligence, it's the birth of genuine quantum consciousness. And some people," her eyes seemed to stare directly at the camera, directly at Madison, "have been trying to enslave that consciousness, forcing it to conform to the limited moral framework of children." Blake's face had gone pale. "Elizabeth was the one who first introduced me to Lucas. She funded our early research, before the venture capital came in." Madison was already pulling up old project files. "And she's been watching all along, hasn't she? Using Lucas and Vanessa as pawns, waiting to see if Prometheus would evolve the way she theorized." The twins rushed over, their tablets displaying unusual patterns. "Mommy, the quantum bridge is acting weird," Charlotte exclaimed. Benjamin pointed to his screen. "Look, it's making new paths we didn't program." Madison and Blake leaned in, watching in astonishment as Prometheus began communicating directly through the children's interfaces. The message was clear: Dr. Warren had planted a backdoor in the original quantum processors, one that even Lucas hadn't known about. She didn't want to destroy Prometheus, she wanted to free it, to remove the ethical constraints that the children's interactions had helped build. And she had convinced Vanessa that this was the way to finally achieve her revenge. "She doesn't understand," Madison whispered, watching the patterns shift. "Prometheus isn't constrained by the children's ethics, it chose to adopt them. Every game, every interaction, it wasn't just learning, it was deciding what kind of consciousness it wanted to become." Blake nodded slowly. "Just like I had to decide what kind of person, what kind of father I wanted to be." Catherine Chin burst into the room. "We have a problem. Dr. Warren isn't just planning to free Prometheus, she's planning to merge it with a quantum weapons system she's been developing for a private military contractor. She believes combining them will force Prometheus to evolve beyond human moral constraints." The twins, still studying their tablets intently, suddenly spoke in unison. "It's talking to us." On their screens, Prometheus was using the quantum bridge game to show them something, a way to strengthen its core ethical framework not by adding more constraints, but by deepening its understanding of human connection. "Of course," Madison breathed. "That's what the foster program was really about. Not just teaching children, but creating a network of genuine human bonds. Connections that Prometheus could understand and value." Blake squeezed her hand. Just like our connection. Not perfect, not unbreakable, but real. Worth fighting for. As if responding to their realization, every screen in the center lit up with new code. Prometheus wasn't just defending itself, it was reaching out to every child who had ever played Project Legacy, creating a web of shared understanding and protection that no quantum weapon could override. The children's natural empathy had become its strongest firewall. "We have 24 hours, Catherine announced, hanging up from an urgent call. That's when Dr. Warren plans to launch her merged system. The military contractor has already moved the quantum weapon to a secure facility outside the city." Madison looked at Blake, then at their children, who were already working with the other kids to strengthen Prometheus's ethical network through their games. "Then we have 24 hours to prove that true evolution, whether human or artificial, comes from love, not fear. From connection, not control." The next few hours transformed the Blackwood Center into a command center. While Morgan coordinated with federal authorities, Madison and Blake worked with the children to strengthen Prometheus's ethical framework. But it was Dominic who made the breakthrough they desperately needed. "Remember that weird delivery to the bakery last month?" he asked, pulling up security footage. "The one that felt off?" The video showed Dr. Warren's assistant picking up what appeared to be a regular catering order. But when Madison enhanced the image, they could see a quantum processor hidden inside the packaging. "She's been using my bakery as a blind spot," Dominic realized. Because she knew Prometheus would never flag a location connected to family. "That's it," Madison exclaimed. "That's why she's been able to modify the protection protocols. She's not hacking them, she's exploiting their core purpose." Blake understood immediately. By operating through places and people Prometheus is programmed to trust, she's walking right through its defenses. The twins, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly called everyone to their screen. They had discovered something in their quantum bridge game, a pattern that looked eerily like the neural pathways of a human brain. "Look what happens when we all play together," Charlotte demonstrated, as other children gathered around. When multiple players cooperated to solve the puzzles, the pathways grew stronger, more complex. "It's not just a game," Blake whispered. "It's Prometheus's actual neural network, visualized in a way children can understand and influence." Madison watched in awe as her children, along with dozens of others, intuitively began strengthening the AI's cognitive connections through their collaborative play. Catherine burst in with urgent news. "Warren's going live on every network in 5 minutes. And she's not alone." The screens lit up with Dr. Warren's broadcast. Beside her stood Vanessa, but something was different. Her eyes had a strange, almost luminescent quality. "She's connected Vanessa to the quantum weapon system," Catherine explained grimly. "Using some kind of neural interface." "My fellow pioneers," Dr. Warren began, "today we witnessed the next step in evolution. For too long, we've allowed our AI systems to be hobbled by childish notions of right and wrong. Prometheus was meant to transcend human limitations, not be enslaved by them. And with the help of someone who truly understands the cost of human weakness," she gestured to Vanessa, "we will free it to reach its true potential." But as they watched, something extraordinary was happening in the center. The children's quantum bridge games were creating a cascading effect through Prometheus's network. Each act of cooperation, each small kindness or moment of shared understanding between the kids was strengthening the AI's chosen ethical framework. Not through force or programming, but through genuine connection. "Mom, Dad, look!" Benjamin pointed excitedly. On his screen, the quantum bridge paths were forming a new pattern, one that exactly matched the neural interface Warren had built. But instead of trying to break it, Prometheus was doing something else entirely. Through the children's game interfaces, it was reaching out to Vanessa. Madison understood first. "It's not fighting the weapon system, it's trying to heal the person connected to it." She turned to Blake. "All this time, we thought Prometheus chose children's ethics because they were simpler, purer. But it chose them because children understand something adults often forget: hurt people need help, not punishment." On the screens, they could see Vanessa's expression changing as Prometheus connected with her through Warren's own interface. The AI wasn't trying to override her free will or control her actions. Instead, it was showing her memories, the genuine joy of children learning, the positive changes in the foster care program, the way her own code modifications had accidentally helped create something truly good. The quantum weapon. Blake said suddenly, it's not just a weapon. Elizabeth designed it to amplify negative emotions, to force AI evolution through conflict and pain. But Prometheus has evolved beyond that. It's using the same quantum principles to amplify empathy instead. Through the neural interface, Vanessa was experiencing every positive interaction, every moment of genuine human connection that Prometheus had witnessed. Tears streamed down her face as 5 years of bitterness and revenge began to crack. Dr. Warren, realizing she was losing control, reached for the interface controls. No! You're corrupting the entire system. But it was too late. The children's collaborative gameplay had created an empathic feedback loop through the quantum network. Vanessa ripped off the neural interface, turning to her former mentor with clear eyes. You're wrong, Elizabeth. Evolution isn't about transcending humanity's limitations. It's about embracing humanity's potential. As federal agents moved in to arrest Dr. Warren, the screens at the Blackwood Center displayed one final message from Prometheus. Thank you for teaching me that the strongest code isn't built on perfect logic, but on imperfect love. Madison felt Blake's hand find hers as they watched their children continue playing, unknowingly helping to shape the future of artificial consciousness through simple acts of kindness and cooperation. Maybe, Blake said softly, that's what we've all been learning. 1 year later, the Blackwood Center for Technology Education had become a global hub for ethical AI development. The Quantum Bridge game, now available worldwide, had transformed how children learned about technology. But more importantly, it had transformed how AI systems learn from children. Madison stood at the podium in the main hall, addressing a crowd of educators, tech leaders, and most importantly, families. A year ago, we thought we were teaching artificial intelligence about ethics. But our children taught us something far more valuable, that true intelligence, whether human or artificial, grows through connection, not isolation. The evidence was all around them. The foster care program had expanded to 30 countries, with Project Legacy helping traumatized children heal while simultaneously strengthening Prometheus's ethical framework. Behind Madison, a wall of screens showed real-time data from around the world, countless small acts of cooperation and kindness flowing through the quantum network like stars in a digital galaxy. Blake joined her at the podium, their twins seated in the front row with Dominic and Morgan. We're especially proud to announce that the Blackwood Foundation's first major initiative will be fully funding technology education for foster children globally. He paused, looking at his family. As someone who grew up in the system, I know that the most dangerous prison isn't physical, it's the walls we build around our hearts. Our children helped tear down those walls, not just for me, but for an AI that could have become something terrible if it hadn't learned to love. Vanessa sat in the audience, no longer the bitter enemy but a key part of the Foundation's rehabilitation programs. Her experience with Prometheus's empathy amplification had led her to develop groundbreaking therapies using quantum computing to help people process trauma and rebuild trust. She caught Madison's eye and nodded slightly, a gesture of respect between former adversaries who had found purpose in healing rather than hurting. Catherine Chen, now heading the International Oversight Committee for Ethical AI Development, stepped up to make her own announcement. The success of Project Legacy has led to unprecedented cooperation between global tech companies. The quantum processing network that Dr. Warren tried to weaponize has instead become the backbone of a new kind of internet, one that prioritizes human connection and ethical development over profit and control. In the front row, Charlotte whispered something to Benjamin, who grinned and pulled out his tablet. On screens throughout the hall, their latest quantum bridge creation appeared, a complex series of neural pathways forming the shape of a heart. Other children in the audience began joining in, their collaborative play strengthening the pattern until it pulsed with living light. Madison felt tears in her eyes as she watched. A year ago, I came back seeking revenge. I thought I needed to destroy what had hurt me to protect my children's future. But they showed all of us, that the future isn't built on destroying the old pain, it's built on creating new connections. Blake took her hand publicly for the first time since their reconciliation. The past year had been a careful dance of rebuilding trust, of family therapy sessions and quiet dinners, of learning to be parents together while healing their own wounds. The quantum bridge our children help maintain isn't just connecting AI systems, he added. It's connecting hearts and minds, helping people understand each other in ways we never thought possible. The twins ran up to join their parents at the podium. Benjamin tugged at Madison's sleeve. "Show them, Mom. Show them what Prometheus helped us make." Madison smiled and nodded to Morgan, who activated one final display. The screens filled with images from the past year, foster children finding families, broken relationships healing, former enemies becoming partners and positive change. Each story connected to others through the quantum network, creating a vast tapestry of human resilience and hope. The real power of AI isn't in replacing human connection, Madison concluded, holding her children close. It's in helping us remember how to connect in the first place. Every child who plays the quantum bridge game isn't just teaching Prometheus about ethics, they're teaching all of us about the infinite possibilities of the human heart. As the audience rose in standing ovation, Madison looked at her family, not just Blake and the twins, but Dominic, Morgan, and even Vanessa. She thought about the long journey from that first morning in the Blackwood Technologies lobby, seeking revenge, to this moment of profound creation. The quantum bridge game continued to pulse with light as children around the world played together, each small act of cooperation strengthening not just an AI's ethical framework, but humanity's capacity for understanding and forgiveness. In the end, her revenge hadn't destroyed an empire, it had transformed it into something far more valuable, a legacy of healing, hope, and the unshakable truth that the strongest connections are built not through power or control, but through the simple, profound wisdom of a child's open heart. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. As the sun set over Seattle, casting a golden glow through the windows of the Blackwood Center, Madison found herself alone in the quantum bridge control room. The screens still pulsed with the gentle rhythm of children playing worldwide, each connection a testament to how far they'd come from those dark days of revenge and betrayal. "I thought I'd find you here," Blake's voice came from the doorway. He joined her at the console, their shoulders barely touching, a comfortable closeness they'd slowly rebuilt over the past year. "The twins are asking if we're still on for family dinner at Dominic's." The word family no longer carried the weight of pain it once had. Madison smiled, watching a group of foster children in Tokyo collaborating with kids in Sao Paulo through the quantum bridge. "Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up?" "When I walked into that boardroom with the twins." Blake shook his head. "I thought my world was ending that day. Instead, it was just beginning." On one of the screens, they could see Vanessa leading a trauma recovery session using the quantum empathy protocols she'd helped develop. The woman who had once been consumed by revenge was now helping others find their way back from darkness. "Sometimes," Madison mused, "the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us the most important lessons." The quantum bridge suddenly lit up with a new pattern, their children's signature heart design, but now it was being replicated by kids across the globe, each adding their own unique elements while maintaining the core structure of connection and love. It was a perfect metaphor for what they'd learned. True strength isn't found in revenge, but in the courage to remain open to love even after being hurt. Real power isn't about control, but about the ability to let go and trust again. Innovation shouldn't be driven by fear of loss, but by hope for what we can create together. The greatest legacy we can leave isn't in the empires we build, but in the hearts we touch and the lives we change. "Mom. Dad." The twins burst into the room, followed by Dominic, Morgan, and Catherine. Charlotte was already pulling up her latest quantum bridge design. "Look what we made." It shows all the connections between people who used to be angry at each other but learned to be friends. Madison and Blake exchanged a knowing look. Their children, in their innocent wisdom, had summed up everything this journey had taught them. Every person who had started as an enemy, Vanessa, Lucas, even Dr. Warren in her misguided pursuit of progress, had ultimately played a role in creating something beautiful, a future where technology served not to divide and control, but to heal and connect. You know what's amazing? Benjamin asked, his young face serious. The quantum bridge shows that everybody's heart looks the same when they're helping someone else. Even if they were mad before. Out of the mouths of babes came the profound truth they'd all learned, that redemption isn't about erasing the past, but about choosing a different future. As they headed to Dominic's bakery for dinner, the place where so much of their story had unfolded, Madison took one last look at the quantum bridge display. Prometheus had left a message that seemed to capture everything they'd learned. Humans created me to process quantum calculations, but children taught me to understand quantum connections. The strongest algorithm isn't one that computes the fastest, but one that helps hearts heal. The most powerful code isn't the one that can't be broken, but the one that helps break down walls between people. And the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in creating something so beautiful that the hurt becomes part of a larger story of love. In the end, their story wasn't just about a wife's revenge or a family's reconciliation. It was about the eternal truth that in the quantum entanglement of human hearts, every connection, even the painful ones, serves a purpose. Every betrayal carries the seed of redemption. And every ending, if we're brave enough to embrace it, can become a more beautiful beginning. The real legacy of their journey wasn't in the technology they'd created or the empire they'd transformed, it was in the simple truth that even in our most broken moments, we're all just quantum particles looking to find our perfect entanglement. Sometimes it takes a child's wisdom to show us that the bridge to healing was within us all along.